Here. Good evening, and if you're just tuning in, you are listening live to 105.3 and 107.7 of the United Public Radio Network, also known as UFO Paranormal Radio Network, or sometimes we just like to call it UPRN. And you are listening to or watching The Angel Rock with myself, your host, Lorilei Potvin. A little bit about myself. I should say, too, we're broadcasting, like I said, out in New Orleans, but I am here in Canada, and our amazing guest, who I'm going to get to in just a moment, he's way across the pond. He's a real trooper because it's after 1 a.m. there. So, anyways, welcome. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. I'm also a co-host of my new show, The Thing at the Foot of the Bed, on Thursdays with my amazing co-host, David Hansel. And that's at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hey, Zach, man. Good to see you here already. Glad to see you. A comment there, I'll highlight it. I'm a Canadian clairvoyant medium, a crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, a spiritual teacher and mentor, and registered nurse. And I'm also quite well versed with paranormal activity, having gone through it for many years myself. Things I want to tell you about I always got to remember all the little list of goodies here. First of all, if you're on Facebook, we would love to have you be part of the conversation. So if you head to UFO Paranormal Radio, whether that's the Facebook page or YouTube, or you can go to my YouTube YouTube channel, which is The Angel Rock with Lorilei Potvin, I will be able to see your comments. But if you're on Facebook and you have never been here before, using StreamYard, you're going to have to go to streamyard.com/Facebook. All you have to do is click very quickly, yes, giving them permission to use your picture and your name. Otherwise, you just come up as Facebook user, and I have no idea who you are. Also, don't forget, if you like what you see here, please share and subscribe. Tell your friends and family, because there's something new for everybody on this network. We've got all kinds of new hosts. We've got new hosts coming. There's a whole plethora of different kinds of shows. It's not all just UFO and paranormal. And when we're not streaming, we have our archive server going. So we've got shows going back, I believe, almost up to 25 years. That's how old this network is. So there's some really interesting content on the network. Lastly, I'm not streaming my show here tonight. I do it on Thursday nights. We have a Roku channel, so we are on TV. So if you want to find our channel, the easiest way, I don't have a channel code. So what you're going to do is sign into your Roku account. Then you're going to the Roku channel store, and you're going to be searching for UFO space P as in paranormal. There'll be a list that comes up. I believe we're the third or fourth one down. And what you're looking for to click on is UFO space paranormal and United Public Radio. And there's all kinds of our newest shows, especially that are streaming over on the TV channel over there. Okay, I think I've remembered everything. I got to say, we got all our regulars here, Nassir. We got Sandra Sharp. She's from the U.S. We got Michelle Pratt. She's over in Australia. Erica Miras. And I know you don't know me, but this is her nickname. And she loves when I call her this, the Crystal Whore. We love having her here. We've got Robin on Haffern Paranormal here from the UK already. So we've got lots of people in the chat already. So let me introduce you guys to my amazing guest. Nassir Sabah is a neuroscientist and professor at the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department, American University of Beirut, Lebanon. That's where he is right now. And it's late, like I said. Professor Sabah has held several administrative positions at the American University of Beirut as chairman of the Electrical Engineering Department, founding director of the Institute of Computer Studies, and dean of the Faculty of Engineering and Architecture from January 1986 through June 1999. Hang in here just one sec. Joe, am I bringing you on here for a sec? This is the owner of the network. I'm not sure. I see you there. I don't know if you want to come on or not. So come on if you do. I can see him. He's in the back. He's in our green room. I'll keep reading, Joe. So if you want to pop on, go ahead and pop on. I don't know if you're going to make an announcement or something. So, because I know we have our podcast awards coming up. So I wasn't sure if that's why. Anyways, back to Dr. Nassir's biography here. In addition, he has more than 35 years teaching experience, mainly in neuroengineering, biomedical engineering, electronics, and electric circuits. Since his college years, Professor Sabah has keenly and personally interested in matters of spirituality, philosophy, and religion. He has done considerable reading and research on these topics and has given public lectures on issues related to the mind-brain problem. Now, these two sound like they don't go together, but Nassir, as he's asked me to call him, has written a book, which I need it to come up, the cover. Hang on, here it is. It is called, come on, load up, Spirituality. You can fill us in. Welcome. Welcome. It's nice to see you here. I'm so glad to have you, Nassir. I
Well,
can see it briefly in the background. Spirituality, is it Rekindled?
spirituality rekindled.
Okay, that's what I
Re-
thought it was. Yes.
Rekindled. Yes, that's right. The
Oh, wow.
quest for the quest for serenity and self-fulfillment.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Okay, so I've got to ask you because when our good friend here, Gavin Davies, who I work with quite a bit and love to give him a good shout out because he works with John Hunt Publishing, when he sent me your profile, I went, oh, I have to talk to you. So I don't even know where to start because how do you marry your professional affiliations and all of what you've done academically with spirituality? What was the impetus? Like, how did you start that?
Well, it's really not difficult to see. After all, the scientists are human beings, and it's not the science and the teaching and the technicalities that occupy us. As human beings, we have to think about the world around us.
Mhm,
And I have been always occupied with the question, what's the purpose and meaning of our existence?
mhm. Most human
So
beings ask that. Most, and even as a psychic medium and a spiritual teacher and mentor, I get that all the time. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what my purpose is. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
that's right. Yes. So that question has been occupying me for a very long time over the years, and I have read a lot about philosophy, religion, and psychology, and all that, trying to make some sense of it all.
Okay.
Now, the Now, in my career at the American University of Beirut,
Mhm.
I have taught courses on electrical engineering, biomedical engineering, biophysics, neuroscience. The administrative positions I held at the university, especially as dean of the Faculty of Engineering and Architecture for 13 and a half years,
Yes.
allowed me to introduce several academic programs that opened up new career paths for thousands of young men and women. That was highly gratifying,
I
but
bet.
always left the nagging thought that it was not enough. Our students labored for 4 years, including summers, preparing for their professional careers. But
Mhm.
for what purpose in life? To make money? To live affluently? To achieve recognition and fame? To be happy in some way? Or what? Most people set their own goals early in life and strive to pursue them, convinced of their worthiness. As a long-time educator, I felt I had to promulgate in simple language the answers that I find most rational, convincing, and satisfying as to the purpose and meaning of life. So, the natural consequence of all this was to write the book, Spirituality Rekindled, The Quest for Serenity and Self-Fulfillment.
Okay. Okay, I was waiting for you to finish. I didn't want to jump in there. So, I have a university degree, a Bachelor of Science actually in nursing. I never planned to follow the path that I'm on now, but life can change in an instant, as it did for myself with a workplace accident. So I hear what you're saying, because I talk about this often when I'm teaching or different shows. I always say I was so deeply blessed to be there at the beginning of life, working in the intensive care neonatal unit and labor and delivery, maternal newborn. Also, I'm a mother. And then in my career out in the community, I did a lot of technical stuff, but where I felt there was a lot of worth, and I actually learned a lot of life lessons, was working in palliative care at the end stage of life. And I love what you just said about students training for 4 years with their profession. Like, what are they chasing, basically? Affluence, riches, fame, for, all those things. But the one thing I always saw when people were at the end of their life and ready to transition to whatever their belief system was, whether it's heaven, the universe, whatever it is, even if they don't have one, nobody ever said, and I've looked after people with billions of dollars to the poorest of the poor, nobody ever said, gee, I wish I made more money. Gee, I wish I worked harder in life with my profession. It always came down to talking about, I wish I had let the people in my life know how much they meant to me. I wish I told them every day how much I loved them. I wish I had played more. I wish I had taken time to enjoy life more instead of putting things off. Did you find a little bit of this in your studies? Is that maybe a little bit when you were talking about the students? Is that what gave you pause for thought? It's not all just academics and what the profession will bring. There has to be more to life.
Right. Yes. Yes. I always urge my students to think hard about what do they want to do in life?
Mhm.
What's their goal? What do they want to achieve? What will make them better human beings? Not just better professionals, but better human beings. Uh, how about their self-development as as
Agree.
as as they go along to become better humans? I think this is a very important thing that we must always keep in mind. Day after day, are we becoming better human beings in all respects? That is psychologically, morally, intellectually, in all these respects, are we becoming better human beings? If the
Mhm.
answer is yes, then we're on the right track. If not, then we have to do some hard thinking and and try to put things right.
I've got so many things going through my mind. First of all, wouldn't it be such a blessing if you could pass this type of mindset along to all educators around the world? Because I find as we're, I don't know, my battery, sorry, it was almost unplugged. I wouldn't need to cut off on you here. Sorry. I was like, what's that sign? Sorry, I was saying, it would be it's a dream of mine, actually, that I live enough years to see the complete education and raising of from an infant right on up to an adult, of many of the practices that I believe make you a better human being. You know, and I feel like, for example, part of my mission is teaching people to remember who they really are, because we are so much more powerful, but not from an ego sense, but we're capable of so much more than we've ever been taught. But what I like what you said about being better humans, and I won't define it because I want to hear your words, how you would define a better human being. But I will say one of the best places I think we can start is with love, right? And kindness, because the golden rule, treat others the way you'd want to be treated. But I want to hear your definition. What's your definition for people listening about how to be a better human, or what you found when you were writing this book?
Well, I am convinced, and this is very much considered in the book, Spirituality Rekindled, that the way we become better human beings is through our conduct in life. The
Great.
way we treat others, the way we act towards others, the way we talk to others, the way we feel with others. This is essentially how you become a better human being, by virtuous conduct towards others. So,
Go ahead, sorry.
sorry?
I didn't know if you were finished. I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut in there because I've got so many questions. And one of them is, was there something in your career that gave you that little nudge to want to write that book? Or was it that you've always felt this way about humanity, about becoming a better human? Because, looking at your biography, and I do believe in basing some of the things with spirituality actually from a scientific perspective and building on that. But somebody just taking a quick look would go, how did he ever write a book about spirituality from the background that you have? So have you always felt this way or always been deeply spiritual, say since a young child?
Well, yes. I mean, even as a young teenager, I thought about life and what it means, what's the purpose and meaning of our, what's the purpose and meaning of our existence here.
Mm-hmm.
But now that you asked whether there were particular influences in my
Yeah.
life, and yes, there were some very sort of very steering influences. The first is when I joined the University of Birmingham as an undergraduate in electrical engineering. The professor, who was the chairman of the department, he used to meet with students from overseas, first-year students from overseas. And there were about maybe 10 of us.
Okay.
We used to meet on Wednesday afternoons, very informally. And he used to talk about sciences in general, especially the modern sciences outside engineering, such as, for instance, modern physics, cosmology, biology. But he did that from a philosophical and sort of integrative point of view.
Interesting.
And that really set me thinking,
Yeah.
about what does it all mean. I could see that there was an underlying unity to it all, that it's not really it's not really proper or meaningful to think of just the various sort of small disciplines, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and chemistry and whatnot, that there was an underlying unity to all of it. And that really set me thinking,
Okay.
Then a bigger influence was when I started my PhD.
Okay.
And I was very fortunate
Mhm.
to have as my PhD advisor Sir John Eccles, who was a Nobel laureate
Okay.
in physiology and medicine. He had a very imposing, a kind of air about him,
I get
and
you. Okay.
he was extremely knowledgeable in all matters of science and philosophy. Now, he was a devout Roman Catholic, and he was a dualist. That is, he believed in the separation of the mind and the brain.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
He believed in the existence of the soul.
Mhm.
So and that, of course, was highly spiritual for a scientist to believe in the existence of the soul, to think of the brain beyond materialism, that it
Yes.
cannot be all just a matter of physics, chemistry, and interaction between nerve cells. In fact, in one of his books, he calls this superstition, which is a very strong opinion. And that really influenced me a great deal, because it sort of chimed in with what I had in mind, with what I was thinking, and so I thought more about it, more and more, and there we are.
And
I,
there we
I
are.
have I have come to this conclusion as to what is really satisfying for me in this life, spirituality, and I practice it. So it's not just academic interest. I actually practice it in my everyday life and have been doing so for quite some time and still at it.
I hear you. I just realized I didn't even ask you because there's going to be people, like I mentioned to you, people listening kind of from all over the world here. And some people just dial in. And I don't know if you've run into this yourself, but I find that when people hear the term spirituality, they get this vision of somebody meditating, some Buddhist monk or whatever on top of the mountain with, in the lotus position for hours, or it's very religious based. So how would you define spirituality for people? I'm interested. I think I know what you're going to say, but I never presume. So I'd love for you to share
Well,
that. So how would you define it?
fine. Well, that of course is a very important question.
Mhm.
Spirituality means different things to different people.
Absolutely.
Uh, but a conventional definition of spirituality is a quality of being that is predicated on a sense of connection to the supernatural, that is, to something beyond ourselves,
Mhm.
that is not explained by physical laws. This is the general definition of spirituality that I have that I have been working with. That is, it's a state of being that is
Mhm.
predicated on a sense of connection to the supernatural. And now the supernatural here is not defined in this formal definition. It's just something beyond ourselves that is not explainable by physical laws. Now, in the book, of course, and in my thinking about spirituality, uh, the supernatural
Mhm.
I have identified with God.
Interesting. Okay, so why do you put God in with supernatural? I'm just loving this conversation, by the way. So I'm just curious when I ask you these questions. I always say it's never my job to judge, so it doesn't come with any judgment. I'm really curious. I'd love to hear that because I don't think I've ever heard God sort of put in. I know where you're going with what you're saying, and it makes perfect sense. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. So why would you put God in under supernatural?
Well, because again, in my thinking about the purpose of life, about how the universe came to be, I concluded that it must have been God, and nothing else. So what could be greater and more meaningful, therefore, than associating the supernatural with God, particularly in this definition of spirituality? You see. The 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 general framework of my thinking proceeded along certain sort of logical sequence,
Yeah.
a certain logical sequence. First of all, uh, well, as a neuroscientist in particular, and of course as a human being, what what I found very striking are the human mental capacities.
Okay.
People take them for granted,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
if you really think about them,
Mhm.
you find that they are just stupendous. We have amazing mental capacities, whether in for instance, doing scientific research or creating works of art of unbelievable beauty, the feelings that these that the beauty around us would evoke in us. We have astonishing mental capacities, which
And we
are
can
way
regenerate too. I wanted to throw that in there. The astonishing capacity of the body to be able to regenerate, like say after a stroke or a head injury, or somebody's had a
exactly
heart
for
attack.
sure, absolutely.
I know you're
But
not talking about the same
yeah,
thing, but we are
yeah,
amazing beings.
yeah. But you see, the point is that the physiology we share with various animals.
Hmm.
However, when you look at our mental capacities
Hmm.
and you compare them with our closest biological kin, who's the
True.
chimpanzee, you see, we share with the chimpanzee 95% of our DNA. And of course, the physiology is also very common. But when you look at the mental capacities, you see a tremendous difference. I mean, how can you compare the human mental capacity with that of a chimpanzee? Although we share 95% of our DNA. So the point is, therefore, that these astonishing human capacities, mental capacities, that are stupendously beyond those of our closest biological kin,
Right.
means that these astonishing mental capacities were put there by a power for a
Yes.
purpose.
Yes.
And that is really a very important point to keep in mind. That all these astonishing mental capacities that we have are not for nothing. They're there for a purpose.
Okay, so I've been taking notes because all these thoughts are coming to me as you're talking here. I've got one of these brains, like when you're talking, I'm 100 miles ahead, so I got to keep notes here. So I'm going to back up a little bit while we were talking about God, putting this God under the umbrella, we'll say, of the supernatural. And when you were mentioning about science can't really, so far, really, it can't prove the complete existence of God. It can't. I agree with you. But what are your thoughts with what quantum physics is doing? Like we look at Dr. Emoto with I'm just pulling this out of the air, the water experiment, where he's got two pitchers of water, right? And one is directed thoughts, words, emotions, very negative, the other one very positive. And then he looked at them microscopically. I know that's not quite quantum physics. I'm kind of sneaking it in there, but you start getting into energy, right? And the principles of energy and thought and intention, right? When we get into the intelligence of the human. So what's your thoughts? Like there's some other things too, like it's proving, like for example, when I do healing work, I don't have to have somebody in front of me. I could work with somebody, say where you are in Lebanon, and we'd have the same effect still. So how do we explain all that too? Like, do you think science is starting to or trying to, or are you seeing any evidence of it?
Well, now, the second point in this sequence of reasoning is that okay.
I stopped you too soon. Sorry.
Sorry. We have these astonishing mental capacities
Mhm.
that were put there by somebody, by some power, and for a purpose. Now, to me, the only power, of course, that has that has endowed us with all these astonishing mental capacities could only be God, the creator of the universe
Yep.
and the guide and sustainer of everything in it. Now, of course, this brings in an extremely important point. Does God exist? So
Okay.
that's a very basic question.
Okay, can I stop you there for 1 sec? I'm just going to throw this into the mix. I have studied near-death experiences for 40 years, both professionally and personally. I believe I had a near-death experience as a very, very, very small child, like a toddler age. So I don't remember a lot. I get kind of flashes. You said, "Does God exist?" I'm so glad we're going. I love having conversations like this. So I'm going to share this and then we'll see where it kind of meets up. And I don't say I'm right. I don't know all the answers, but I think, yes, God exists depending on, and there'll be human beings that will call it a different name. So when I'm working with people, some people may say Allah, some people may say the Messiah, some people may say the universe, whatever it may be. We're all talking about this incredible, loving source from where we come from, I believe, and where we return. I actually call it home. I don't think there's any death. We just lose this physical body. But I just think that what I've heard you say already, there's just too much evidence that it had to have come from somewhere. Mind you, you run into people, and I'm sure you have too, that just think we're here by accident and there's nothing after this, and will claim to be an atheist, for example. So what did you find with the question, does God exist?
Well, you see that of course, what the existence of God is a question that occupied me a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
As an engineer, we're practically oriented. You see, I I've read a lot about philosophical arguments, theological arguments, moral arguments about the existence of God. But I found them all rather subjective. It's
Yeah.
just it's just what
Somebody's
people
opinion. Somebody's
are
opinion.
thinking. Yeah, they are all opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking more for hard evidence, for objective evidence
Yeah, I hear you.
that
Because
God
you're a
exists.
scientist and research, right? And I know that because, like I said, with a degree, I have a bachelor's of science degree in nursing. So I took a lot of science courses. I took statistics and how to write research reports and stuff. So I get where you're going with this. I'd love
Exactly.
to hear what you
I was
discovered.
looking for some hard objective evidence
Mm-hmm.
that God exists,
Okay.
and I found it.
Ooh.
I
Oh, I can't wait to
I
hear.
I found it in the Quran.
Ah, okay. Well, we got to
Now,
hear about this.
now here, of course, I don't want anybody to get the wrong ideas. Quran is the holy book of Islam,
Mhm.
but I'm not talking about Islam as
Okay.
a religion at all. This is not the point at all. Uh,
It's just where you
for
found
for
this.
for of course non-Muslims,
Mhm.
the Quran should be regarded just as a standalone text. Just consider the Quran as which is what I did. Just consider the Quran as a standalone text to be
Okay.
judged with an open mind, without any prejudice or bias.
Okay.
And I found in the Quran science-based evidence about the existence of God.
Okay.
It, it's full of that.
Okay.
Now, this kind of evidence can be divided into two broad classes.
Okay.
Things that have to do with physical phenomena, description of physical phenomena, and things to do with some very strange numerical relations that were discovered in recent times.
Interesting.
These two lines of evidence
Okay.
made me absolutely convinced that the Quran could not possibly be of human origin. It just
Interesting.
cannot possibly be of human origin. and I can give you just a few examples if you like,
Please do. Yeah,
as to
absolutely.
as to as to what I mean.
Okay.
Now concerning, for instance, the
I'm leaning in and in and in. I'm really interested.
yeah. Well, concerning the scientific evidence, for instance,
Okay.
first of all, the, 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 the evidence concerning physical phenomena. Well, there are two types of references in the Quran to physical phenomena.
Okay.
One of them is very explicit. It just it's just very clear and just unequivocal. For instance, the Quran speaks about internal ocean waves
Okay.
in very clear terms, that there are waves internal to deep waters. And
Right.
this was discovered about 100 years ago.
Okay.
The Quran speaks about it mentions in exact words, for instance, fire tornadoes.
Ooh.
And fire tornadoes were discovered in the 21st century. They were first observed in Australia, and then they were seen in the California.
I'm going to stop you
So
for 1 sec. So we have a comment. I'm going to answer it.
did
Erica
he
says,
say he found the proof of God's existence in the Quran? Yes, yes, yes,
she says
absolutely.
she could listen to you all day. I don't know if you saw that comment. She said she just loves
Yes,
your
yes,
accent.
of course, of course. Yeah, yes, that is exactly what I have been saying.
So the
Also,
fire
for instance,
tornadoes, sorry, in California, you
yeah,
said they were discovered.
uh, a third example is, for instance, planetary nebulas being like roses. This is specifically mentioned in the Quran very clearly. And of course, NASA has been able to take photographs of planetary nebulas, such as the Cat's Eye Nebula, the Rosette Nebula, that look actually like roses. So these are very explicit and clear references
Where do
to.
you think they came from? Because I'm going to ask you this question.
Sorry.
I'm going to say, so you said that you don't think that possibly they came from man, if you will, right? Because of the what's written in the Quran. But I'm going to ask you this. Do you think it's a possibility when we start, and I know you're still going to share a little bit more from the Quran, and I appreciate that, but I'm just keeping this in mind. Do you think possibly, though, there were human beings that were able to access the universal consciousness and channel that information from the future and leaving a record of it for humanity, for individuals like yourself and those that read it and follow the way of the Quran to follow and discover as proof? Do you see what I'm saying? Like they could have come from way back when, and there is no, I believe there's no time on the other side, present, past, future, anything. It's all at the same time, right? And then we have the universal consciousness. Do you believe maybe that's where it could have come from? Or just keeping it in mind, I didn't mean to cut you off because I know you're going to add a little bit more, but
Well, okay. Now I have been reading about people talking about universal consciousness
Mhm.
and things like that. But I really find it kind of too abstract for me,
Okay,
and a
you're
bit
looking
hard
for
to
proof.
and a bit hard to sort of pin down.
I hear
Now,
you. Because you're looking for proof, like you said.
yeah,
Like this
yeah,
is
yeah.
something, a construct that's pretty
Yes,
obtuse.
I'm looking for tangible,
Gotcha.
easy to
Okay,
understand,
gotcha.
easy to comprehend the evidence.
Makes perfect sense. I hear you exactly.
Now, here is another comment. Who wrote the Quran? Sorry, I'm ignorant to this info. Well, can I answer this question very
I put
briefly?
it up there. You can answer whatever you like. That's why I'm putting it up there. There's
Okay.
no structure here. You know what? That's why I told you when we come on here, we're just gonna have a conversation. That's why I love doing this show. I never know where I'm going with the show. It's just I
Okay.
want to find out about
Okay.
you and find out. Mhm.
That's fine. Well, let me then give some background
Absolutely.
to this. Uh, the Quran is actually the holy book of Islam,
Right.
and Islam is one of the three Abrahamic religions, which are, of course, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism.
Right.
Now, God revealed the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad,
Oh,
just
that's
as
right.
he as God made revelations to Jesus and Moses.
Moses. Yeah.
And the Quran asks Muslims, or it to or it actually the Muslims should believe in the revelations made to Jesus, Moses, and all the other prophets that who preceded them. Now, the Quran was revealed to Muhammad, as I said, over a period of 23 years. And it has a very high degree of authenticity in the sense that it was written down as soon as Muhammad received the revelations. These were written down. So there was a record of them from the very beginning. And this record has remained. So
Unchanged, right?
the
Unchanged. It's
Quran that is used today, the only official version of the Quran all over the world is the original Arabic text. And it has not changed since it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. So
okay.
it has a high degree of authenticity. And no official translation of the Quran, and no translation of the Quran to any other language is considered official because because when translating the meaning that is conveyed by the translator is what that translator has had understood, and that now is a subjective, that now is a human element that has been introduced.
Mhm.
So the only official version of the Quran is the original version.
Well, plus, don't you find with language, like I speak three languages,
Sorry.
and I said, don't you find also with languages, I speak three languages, and I find that sometimes when you try and translate something from one particular language, say just into English, a lot of things get lost in translation. We may not have a word to convey the meaning behind the original
Absolutely,
text.
absolutely. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is also part of it.
Hmm.
They're different. You cannot you rarely can translate the exact meaning of a word
Hmm.
from one language to another.
Right.
But it goes beyond that. There's also a matter of the interpretation, because many verses in the Quran, for instance, that you just you can understand them one way,
Hmm.
but it's just but that is your own understanding. And in Arabic, in particular, you have different layers of meaning
Right.
in the text.
Hmm.
So therefore, what a translator would then merely convey what he understood, but that may not be only, but that may not be the intended meaning, or it may not be
Gotcha.
definitely the only meaning. So one has to be very careful. So
Can I know
here is
you're
a
going to
comment.
read this, but can I ask you one question before you answer that? So when you say Muhammad is a prophet, I think I'm thinking it's semantics when I say a channeler, because where do you believe a prophet would get this information? Because to me,
Where?
a prophet and a channeler, they're pulling that information, whether they believe they're hearing the voice of God or what have you.
Okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
well, that's a very good question.
Mhm.
In the case of the Quran is supposed to have been revealed
Ah,
directly
okay.
directly to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel.
Okay.
So that is something very specific. Well, here is a question. So is it kind like a Bible, or do you believe that was made up as scare tactics? I don't understand
Okay, so what she's
the
asking,
scare tactics part, or the
okay,
Book
so
of
what she's
Mormon.
saying is, I think, and Erica, correct me if I'm wrong. So she's saying, would the Quran be akin to or similar to the same type of book with reverence like the Bible is? Or then she gives you an example of what she means by made up or scare tactics. Now, this is her opinion. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Like the Book of Mormon, which
Well,
somebody by the prophet Joseph Smith wrote. So she's feeling that that is a
yeah,
made up or scare
yeah,
tactic.
yeah. Well, you see, again, I would like to very strongly emphasize that that in the Quran, it states very clearly that the God of Islam is the same God of Christianity, it's the same God
I
of
like that.
Judaism,
Mhm.
and it's the same God who also made revelations to many prophets before Jesus and Moses.
I like
So
that.
these were all revelations from the same God. So and of course, the Muslims are supposed to believe in the revelations to Jesus, in the revelations to Moses,
Mhm.
and in all the prophets that are mentioned in the Bible. I should also emphasize that the Quran speaks more of the miracles of Jesus than the Bible. The only woman that is mentioned by name in the Quran is the Virgin Mary. She's the only woman who is mentioned by name.
Wow.
And she is, the Quran states that that the Virgin Mary has been purified over all women, and that she has a very, very high status
Mhm.
in the Quran. So people think of the Quran as something, or Islam as something that is quite separate from Christianity or Judaism. But this is not the case. It's the same God who's made the revelations to the various prophets. I find the concept of Islam eccentric spirituality interesting. Never really thought of that. In conjunction with this, what are the spiritual benefits of following a halal diet? Uh, well, here, see, I must, I always, when discussing these matters, I always make a distinction between two aspects of religion. One is the doctrinal spiritual aspect,
Mhm.
and two, the institutional practiced aspect. Now,
Mhm.
these two are can be very different. Why? Because okay, the doctrinal and spiritual aspects are of course there for everyone to see
Mhm.
in the case of the Quran. Well, it is the Quran itself that is the source of spirituality. uh, on the other hand, when it comes to the institutional and and practiced aspects, here you have the human factor coming in. You see.
Yes.
And that, of course, brings in a host of problems in the
Yes.
matters of interpretation, in the matters of corruption of the religion, its exploitation for various purposes. This is
Judgment, using the word of the Quran, whether it's a Bible, whether it's a Quran, using it in judgment by your interpretation to
they
throw at
have.
others.
Yes,
Yeah.
they have all been corrupted
Yeah.
to some extent or other by humans.
Yes.
So when I talk about spirituality, I don't mean the spirituality of Islam, because I don't care very much as to what Muslims
And I
say
think you made
or
it
think or
clear
what.
when you
I'm
looked at
talking
it.
about the spirituality of the Quran, the
You,
spirituality that springs from the Quran, and not what Muslims have done or what Muslims have said. I do appreciate that terrible things have been said and done in the name of Islam, the same as in the name of Christianity. So I'm not concerned with this at all. I'm only concerned with the source, which
You
is
made it clear, though,
the
when
Quran.
you were talking about this. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there a minute ago, but I wanted to point out you made it really clear. Like you basically brushed it all aside, and we're not getting into the semantics of it all. We're just going to look at what's right in front of us here, right? Like you said, and appears as
Exactly.
true. Yes.
Exactly. So, I must make it very clear. I'm not talking about Islam as a religion. This does not concern me here at all. I'm talking about the Quran as a standalone text that should be judged on its own merits.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not concerned with what many Muslims practice or say, because most of it is rather superficial anyway. So I'm just talking about what I see, what I found in the Quran. So
So,
yeah.
go
So
ahead.
so it is very important to make this distinction. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spirituality that is based on what the Quran says.
I'm so glad you said that, because there was a question earlier, and yeah, people were thinking at first, I think, that we're getting into the semantics of religion rather than just the text and letting it stand alone, like you said, the words. And I think that well, even as a scientist, you know this as well, that if you're going to look at something, right, you have to go in as objective and as neutral as you can, unless you're putting up an experiment and you have a hypothesis. But like the way you made it really clear, I thought, though, that you're just going in, you're looking at the text and putting all the extraneous stuff aside, right? Like, what does the word of this say? And you said you felt, from what you've shared then, by what was written, never mind the miracles of Jesus compared to what you've seen in other texts, as you said. So was that your sole deciding and convincing factor that God exists, or were there other parameters?
Well, no. This is I just started talking about
I'm sorry.
the,
I'm getting ahead of myself.
about the evidence in the Quran.
Okay.
I have not yet got into
Okay, I'll stop.
into it at all. So let me just elaborate a little.
Absolutely.
I was talking about the science-based evidence, and I said that that this is of two types. One, that's something that is very clear and very explicit, and they gave the examples of internal ocean waves, of fire tornadoes, and of the planetary rose-like nebulas. Now, the second type of science-based evidence occurs in verses that are not very explicit. You see, because you have to understand that the Quran was revealed in the 7th century to the illiterate Bedouin Arabs. You see, so the Quran could not be very specific on many things because it would not make sense to these people. So it had to be in a kind of a cryptic way. But you find verses that that although are cryptic, they express extremely well some physical phenomena, because we can now understand what is being said. Uh, People in the 7th century, they had different meanings about, they understood things differently in a simple way, simply because the science wasn't there behind it. But nowadays, we can explain or understand these verses in the light of present day science. And I can give numerous examples, but I will just mention them very briefly. For instance, references to black holes,
Oh, wow.
references to pulsars,
No
pulsars.
way.
Yeah, of course.
Wow.
References to seamounts, the and the beautiful ecosystems around them. The references and of course how they actually mitigate earthquakes. That's one
Really?
of the functions they do. Uh, Things like for example the earth crust,
Hmm.
how the earth crust is recycled, the recycling of the earth crust, the physiology of the milk production, for instance. There are so many examples, and I have in one of the chapters of the book, of the book Spirituality Rekindled, I actually mention about 14 or 15 examples of science-based evidence. I give the scientific explanation, and I also compare that with what the Quran says. So, and there is more on the website also, NassirSabah.com. So this, to me, this is hard science-based evidence. Then there is the second part, which is the numerical relations. There are very strange numerical relations that have been discovered in the Quran, and only fairly recently, since it has become possible to digitize the Arabic text of the Quran and then subject it to various search programs. And an amazing, intricate web of numerical relations has been discovered, and it's still being uncovered. Now, this is not numerology. I'm not talking about numerology, because numerology refers to numbers, forecasting events, and or sort of giving tidings of good things or bad things. No, I'm not thinking about that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about certain numerical relations between words, between letters, chapters, which is just pure relation between numbers, and these don't need any philosophical or any theological or any interpretations. They're just a matter of simple counting, and just following rules, well specified rules of counting, for instance, Arabic words and letters. Now, again, there are very numerous examples that are given in the book and more on the website. I will give you just one example of what I mean.
Okay.
Just one example. For instance, if you take the Quran has 114 chapters.
Okay.
And it has 6,236 number verses.
Okay.
If you take just these two numbers and lay them side by side, so you have 114, the number of chapters on the left, and 6236, the number of verses on the right. And of course, you have to remember that in Arabic, that the Arabic goes from right to left, not from left to right, as in English. So the smaller unit, the verse, would be on the right. The larger unit, the number of chapters, would be on the left. Now you get a 7-digit number, which is a multiple of 7. Okay, you say, so well, so
Okay.
what? Now you put the numbers in reverse.
Okay.
So instead of having 114, 6236, you say 632 and then 411.
Yeah.
It's still a multiple of 7.
Wow.
Now, yeah, but wait a minute.
It's
Now,
great.
no, that's nothing. That's nothing. If you now consider, if you add now 114, 1 plus 1 plus 4 plus 6 plus 2 plus 3 plus 6. If you add these numbers, you get the number 23, which is the number of years over which the Quran was revealed. Now, if you substitute 23 in place of the number 114, so you have 23, then the number of verses, the resulting number is still a multiple of 7. If you reverse the order,
Still.
it's still a multiple of 7. If you put the 23 instead of the number of verses rather than the number of chapters, you still get a multiple of 7. If you reverse the order of the numbers, it's still a multiple of 7.
What mathematical wizard did that one?
Well, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds of such examples that have been discovered. I'll give you another example. The Quran talks about the stages of the development of the embryo.
Okay.
And that's done in 2 verses in chapter 23, the chapter of the Quran that's number 23. Now these verses that have that talk about the development of the embryo, they consist of 23 words in Arabic, and they use 23 letters of the Arabic alphabet. The Arabic alphabet has 28 letters, and 23 of these letters are used in the verses that talk about the development of the embryo. Now think about it. We have chapter 23, we have 23 words, and we have 23 letters of the Arabic alphabet involved in this description of the development of the embryo. Now, humans have 23
Yeah,
pairs
that's
of
where I was
chromosomes.
going. It just
Now-
hit me before you said it. That's why I went, but
Now
people
you
might
say-
not have gone on. I'm
now you
getting
say-
goosebumps.
Now you say, well, is that a coincidence? Well, okay, you can say, well, this is a coincidence.
Well, we
All
should
right.
tell people, they may not know what we were talking about. Human beings, right? When you're creating an embryo, 23 chromosomes from the mom, 23 chromosomes from the
That's
dad.
right. That's right. That's what happened. Well, consider bees. You know, bees that make honey.
Yeah.
Bees are mentioned once in the Quran.
Okay.
Again, you see the same thing repeating, but even on a larger scale.
Wow.
The mention of bees is in chapter 16, number 16.
Okay.
Again, there are 16 words and 16 letters of the Arabic alphabet are used.
Wow.
The number of verses in that chapter is also a multiple of 16. The number of words from the beginning of the chapter until the word bees occurs is a multiple of 16. The number of words from the word bees till the end of the chapter is 16, is a multiple of 16. It's 16 times 68, where 68 is the verse number where the word bees is mentioned.
Wow.
Now, okay. Now these cannot all be coincidences. And I mean, mathematically, if you take the probability of each of these
Yes.
numerical occurrences to be between 0 and 1,
Excuse me.
and if you consider the huge number of such numerical relations that have been found, then the probability of all these numerical relations occurring by chance is of the order of the product of the individual probabilities. Now, if you multiply a number between 0 and 1, if you raise it to the power of 1,000, for instance,
Right. Yeah.
you get an extremely small probability that it
Absolutely.
has occurred by chance.
I
So
find, oh, sorry, go ahead.
so it cannot possibly be by chance. So
Well, that's what
that's
I
what
was going to add just quickly is, to me, okay, the other things that you shared, the first part. Okay, it was mind blowing, but with numbers don't lie. Like, you just,
exactly, and they don't
that's
need
the
any.
most concrete proof you could get. I'm
They
sorry, but
don't
that
need.
is.
They don't need any interpretation.
No, they don't.
Just
No.
simple arithmetic, and
Wow.
and the consistent rule for counting words and letters.
Yes.
So really, what this has convinced me that the Quran could not possibly be of human origin. It's just impossible.
Would you
Well,
consider
okay, then,
alien though, or extraterrestrial even, just to throw it out there? Like, do you think that could have happened, or do they talk about that kind of thing? Do you even believe in that kind of thing? Because if you don't,
oh,
right,
sure,
then
sure, sure. This is not my personal contention. People have been saying that, and one of the most influential people to have said that is actually a French physician by the name of Maurice Bucaille, who published in 1976 a book.
okay,
The French title is Le Bible, le Coran et la science. That is the Bible, the
Quran
Quran,
and
and
science.
science.
Mhm.
And when speaking about the Quran, he says that the ideas presented in the book are derived from purely scientific considerations. And he concludes that for him, the Quran could not possibly be of human origin.
I agree.
So this is not my own assertion. This is what many people have said, and but which I find very convincing. So one might ask, well, if the Quran is not of human origin, it must be of supernatural origin.
Mhm.
Well, what is this supernatural
Mhm.
origin? It could be God, the creator of the universe and
Mhm.
the guide and sustainer of everything in it. It could be the extraterrestrial aliens, or it could be any supernatural agency that we may not know.
Right.
So, so what does this prove? Well, the Quran says that it has been revealed by God and not
Yeah.
by any other agency.
Mhm.
And there has been no rebuttals, no counterclaims, or no counter evidence
Mhm.
that it was revealed by any other supernatural agency. Therefore, the inevitable conclusion, is that the Quran was revealed by God, who must therefore exist. So, for me, that's a very simple, straightforward reasoning
You
of
got
the
me with the
existence.
numbers. You got me with the numbers. Like the first part, I know because doing what I do that, and I'm not saying this egotistically, but I can channel things. I do believe in that. I believe in God, by the way. I'm not arguing with you or anything like that, but I know there's going to be people out there asking, but you can't argue with numbers. You just can't.
You can't. Yeah, exactly. And
Hmm.
that's the beauty of these numerical relations.
Hmm.
Okay, so I firmly believe then that God exists and that He revealed the Quran. Now, what does the Quran tell us about the purpose and meaning of our existence? Well, the Quran says very clearly.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we might ask you what happens when we die. Well, I will come to that. I'm
I
coming to
figured you were. I literally heard that in my head. You're going to come to that.
of course, a very important question.
Mhm.
So, the what is the purpose of our creation
That was what I was going to ask you next.
According to the Quran? Why did God create humans? And what the Quran says is that well, the Quran talks about the attributes of God
Mhm.
in great detail,
Okay.
and not, of course, the nature of the essence of God, because that is beyond the human comprehension. But it talks about the attributes of God, and the most important attribute of God is what is conveyed in the Arabic word rahma. Now,
Okay.
again, we come to the exact translation here. Rahma has no exact equivalent in English. It's normally translated as mercy. Mercy.
Okay. Yep.
However, it's more than mercy.
Right.
It's actually loving mercy.
Yes.
That is mercy based on love. It's loving mercy. And that is the most important attribute of God, the loving mercy of God. Now, of course, in Christianity, a lot is made about God is love, and that is along the same vein. But you see, love can be a purely passive thing.
Hmm.
Mercy demands action.
True.
Uh,
Hmm.
so the most important attribute of God is loving mercy. Now, what is God? That's a question. Well, I can just interject very briefly here. The nature of God is beyond our understanding. You,
True.
you see, we have to remember that our mental capacities are very, very limited.
Great.
Uh, People think, even scientists are under the wrong impression that we are able to understand everything about the universe. Well, this is just patently untrue. We have very limited mental capacities
Mhm.
compared to what goes on in the universe.
Mhm.
So it's impossible for us to understand to understand God. The only thing that we can understand are some sort of very general statements about the nature of God that
True.
are made in the Quran. But more importantly, it's about God's attributes. It's,
Okay.
now, one of the things that is most revealing, to me at least,
Mhm.
uh, the Quran says God is the light of the heavens and earth.
Mhm.
Now, I think there's also something similar in the Bible.
Mhm.
Now, what does this mean? That God is the light of the heavens and earth. Well, what are some of the important properties of light? There are two important properties. One is light ordinarily is visible by itself,
Right.
because you can see light streaming into a dark room, for
Yes.
instance. because of the scattering of light by the dust particles and all
Right.
that. So light is visible by itself, and light makes everything else visible.
True. Metaphorically and physically.
So that gives you an idea
Mhm.
about what God is. That God is the light. He's the real. He's the reality. God is the reality of the universe,
Mhm.
and through Him, everything else becomes real. So that's what the meaning of God is: the light of the uh, of the heavens and earth. Now, here is a question: would it benefit me to read the English translation, or would it basically be a waste of time since it's not translated correctly? No, no, of course not. Not all people read or understand Arabic, and there are some excellent translations of the Quran that one can refer to. There are many of them. They're mentioned in the book. One of the ones that I use is the is called the Study Quran,
Okay.
and it's by the editor in chief is. Is a distinguished Islamic thinker named Sayyid Nasr, and it's published by Harper One. Date of publication 2015. So the Study Quran is a very good English translation and commentary. You see, it's not enough to just read a translation. You also it's very enlightening to read the commentary as well. And I would highly recommend this translation and
Okay.
commentary of the Quran. So going back, therefore, to what we are saying, that God's most important attribute in the Quran is His loving mercy. And the Quran says that because of God's infinite loving mercy, He created humans for a purpose.
Yes.
And that purpose is for them to have eternal bliss in heaven.
Okay.
Now, when you come to think of it, that is the supreme expression of God's loving mercy. That is to have humans attain eternal bliss in heaven.
Okay.
So that is the purpose of creating humans, according to the Quran. Now, a very important point, and that is very basic to spirituality and all that, is that had God wished, because God is omnipotent, He can do anything He wills, anything He wants.
Yes.
Had God wished, He could have made all humans angel-like and full of goodness, with no evil and suffering in the world. He could have done that. Of course, angels are created like that way. But God could have made humans just like angels, the angel
Mhm.
like, full of goodness, with no evil and suffering in the world. But then life would have no meaning. You see? If
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
so in His omniscience, that is all knowing, and wisdom, all wisdom, God created humans with a wonderful conscious self that has the propensity for righteousness and wickedness.
True.
You see, the conscious self, if you think about the conscious self of humans, it's really an amazing creation.
It is.
Now this conscious self has the propensity for both doing good and evil. And He has created us with the will to make the choice
Mhm.
as to the path that we take in this life. Which path do we follow? Do we follow the path that leads to eternal bliss in heaven? Or do we follow the path that leads to suffering in hell? Now, that is a choice that a person can make. And we have the free will to do so.
True.
Which means, therefore, that life has been made a trial for humans. This is a very important point. The 60 to 90 years or 100 years or whatever that we spend in this worldly life is
Right.
a trial for us.
Mhm.
Are we going to follow the right path, or are we going to follow the wrong path? Now, what is the right path? Well, the right path is, of course, that of serving God. And this is the word that is used in Arabic, not worshiping God, although the word has been translated as worshiping, but it has also been translated
Mhm.
as serving. So the right path is for us to serve God. Now, how do we serve God? Well, how does a good servant serve his master? A good servant would serve his master by obeying him and by doing things that will please him. In
Mhm.
the same way, we serve a good servant, like good servants. Humans serve God by submitting to his will, which is very important, submitting to his will, and by seeking his loving mercy. How do you seek God's loving mercy? It's by being merciful to others. So we seek God's mercy by being merciful to others.
Okay.
Why? Because in doing that, we are reflecting God's most important attribute, and that is loving mercy.
Mhm.
So we please God, we seek his mercy by being merciful to others. How do we be how do we be how can we be merciful to others? Well, it's through our conduct in this life, in acts, in words, and in the way we treat others. So that is essentially, therefore, the purpose of life. Now, where does spirituality come in?
I
This
was
is
just thinking this.
this is the next point. Well, how do you? Well, we said that you serve God by being merciful to the others through virtuous conduct
Mhm.
in this life. And how do you achieve virtuous conduct? Well, I find the best way of achieving virtuous conduct in this life is through the spirituality, which is being advocated in this book, Spirituality Rekindled. Now, in this book, in the last chapter, there is
Okay.
actually a, a roadmap for this spirituality, the various logical constituents of this spirituality. So, first of all, there are foundational beliefs that one has to believe in, such as belief in the existence of God, belief in the afterlife, and belief in God's attributes. Then these would engender certain feelings in one. One is the feeling of extreme humility, because when you ponder the greatness, the majesty, and the glory of God, you cannot but feel humble. You cannot but feel deep, deep humility. Then, of course, there are other feelings, and then there are thoughts and occupying thoughts that will result from these beliefs and feelings. And then there are the attitudes that are a manifestation or an embodiment or a practical manifestation of these beliefs, thoughts, and attitudes. And all this then would become manifested in virtuous conduct. So the virtuous conduct, therefore, is an outward expression of the spirituality. So spirituality that I'm talking about here is the foundation for virtuous conduct. And that is what gives, and in following this virtuous conduct, if you go through all these building blocks, you find that they are all about self-development. You're developing yourself spiritually, psychologically, morally, and intellectually. And it is this continual and extremely self-fulfillment that gives meaning to life. So that is actually the meaning of our life, is to develop ourselves to become better human beings.
Do you think we just get one chance at it, or do you believe that we were eternal?
Sorry?
Do you think we just get one life to do this in your thought process?
Yes.
Or do you believe
Sure.
we're eternal? We're eternal
Oh,
souls that live forever.
we are, well, we can develop ourselves to, of course, to the extent that we can. We cannot just become perfect human. Not all of us can become perfect human beings. Only very few, maybe just the saints or whatever, can maybe achieve a high degree of self-development and self-enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
But for most everyday people, yes, we have plenty of opportunities in this life, and we have the plenty of time to develop ourselves sufficiently to be really spiritual and to be deserving of God's eternal bliss. So that, to me, is the purpose and meaning of life. The purpose of life is to attain eternal bliss in heaven. The meaning of life is self-development in the attainment of this goal during our worldly life. And it is this self-development that makes us better human beings. So that's in a nutshell what spirituality here is about. Now, I should add that really this spirituality has immense psychological benefits.
Okay.
It has immense psychological benefits. First of all, for instance, conquering of negative feelings, such as envy and anger.
But do you think we can really conquer those? Because, okay, if we're talking about God being an omnipotent being, which I will agree with you, that everything that we possess within our body here and what we have, okay, on our person, our psyche, whatever, it's here for a reason. So just bear with me for a sec. So I hear what you're saying, to be striving to not, to remove the anger and some of the, what I would refer to as lower vibrational emotions. But to me, we wouldn't have been given it if it didn't have some sort of purpose, even if it would be maybe just to master it, right?
Of course, it has a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose ultimately is to attain eternal bliss in heaven. That is the ultimate purpose of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to do that, the way to do that is through virtuous conduct. And virtuous conduct and spirituality can be the foundation of virtuous conduct. This is the critical point. And this can have tremendous psychological benefits. First, in the conquering of negative feelings, such as envy and anger. Two, alleviation of anxiety and stress. And of course, you must know what the toll that anxiety and stress would exact on humans, on our health and on our well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Three, in the fostering of positive feelings and attitudes, in promoting tolerance, understanding, and compassion towards all.
Mm-hmm.
In contrast to ruthless competition, mindless materialism,
Great.
and all forms of injustice, oppression, corruption, and exploitation.
Agree.
Four, experiencing the joy of living, the true joy of living, without craving and greed, without excessive indulgence
Mm-hmm.
or anxiety about the ending of life's pleasures, and with a liberating awareness of what is really important in life and what is vain, superfluous, and illusory. And finally, there's an elating spirituality that is reflected in an intense feeling of closeness and connectedness to God, which engenders profound serenity and self-fulfillment. You see, let me just add one thing here. With reliance on God and deference to his will, one would fear nothing and no one, would consider life as but a game with its ups and downs, to be played as best as one can, without apprehension and without losing sight of its ultimate purpose and meaning. One would tolerantly accept whatever comes, not regretting what was lost, nor overjoying at what was gained. Life's challenges become stepping stones on the path of self development rather than stumbling blocks. And I would again like to emphasize very much that the advocated spirituality here is beyond any religious affiliation. It can be it can be embraced by the followers of any religion because it deals with a direct personal connection with God
Mm-hmm.
at, throughout the day, in whatever we do, whatever we say. It's a direct personal connection between the individual and the creator.
Mm-hmm.
And the spirituality can even be embraced by atheists once they get to believe in God and without their following any particular religion. So an atheist who gets to believe in God based on the evidence that has been presented, he can feel this. He can embrace the spirituality,
Yeah, but he
and he
has to
can
want to, or have a
and he can,
reason
yes,
to
of
want
course,
to.
and he can practice the spirituality, and he can reap all its benefits without belonging to any particular religion. So
Okay,
it's a
so I'm
unique.
going to stop you right there for a sec because, okay, I know I always say that I believe religion is a man made concept. You're convincing me a little differently about the Quran here with some of the things you're sharing here. And I'm not saying that with judgment. I'm not saying it's a bad thing because I think religion has been wielded like a weapon rather than what probably its true intention was in the beginning, depending on what one we're looking at. There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of either you do this or else you're going to hell or you're doing this or whatever. Okay, I was raised Roman Catholic my entire life. I no longer subscribe to a religion. Do I believe for me, is it God? Yes. Do I believe that, all these different religions say my God's better than your God is for? No. And you said that tonight, that basically God is God. Okay. I like what you said about the atheism, but to me, the person has to want to do that. You're right. They could reap all the benefits from spirituality, practicing spirituality by just being a better human being, basically. And so I think it was Erica that put in the comments. She said, it's basically love and a few others that have been here tonight have said the same thing. Or like you said, I get where you're going with all of this. And at first I used to say, I'm never knocking religion. You know, some people need it. And it kind of changed my perception as of late over the last few months. And it was a story I was hearing somebody tell on a podcast, on the Next Level Soul podcast, talking basically about, in a nutshell, whatever brings you closest to God, so be it, right? It doesn't, if it's religion for some, if it's spirituality for others. Do you see where I'm going with that? So I hear what you're saying, and I can't disagree with it. And I'm glad that you pointed out that it's not based on a religion, because it could be misconstrued if somebody just tuned in and heard us talking, right? That it was
Yeah.
religious based.
Yeah.
Like hell, like you brought up hell. Are you convinced that there is a hell?
I convinced that there is.
Mhm.
Sorry,
That there's
what
hell, that there's a hell,
that there?
that there is hell. Like you said, there's hell,
Hell.
heaven.
Yes, of course, of course.
Hmm.
Absolutely. You have to believe that if we follow the right path, we're rewarded for it. If we follow the wrong path, we have to face the consequences. However,
Where does
uh,
karma come in, though? And then you look at, are we using a human construct of the way we look at justice and punishment and reward for good behavior? And these are just thoughts I'm putting out there for conversation.
well, again, you see, uh, the Quran speaks about uh, the blessings of heaven and, of course, the suffering in hell.
Hmm.
Now, here's a very important point that again, the blessings in heaven, the Quran says that they are unimaginable to us. We don't, we cannot comprehend what these blessings are, what the nature of these blessings is. But it gives sort of a very general description that the blessings in hell, that the blessings in heaven are spiritual, are mainly spiritual. They're in a state of complete peace
Hmm.
of the soul in the presence of God. That there is an incredible feeling of peace and serenity and tranquility. That this is that this is at the very essence of the blessings of heaven. Now, now suffering in hell is described in the Quran also in very in really blood curdling terms. But however, again, there are verses in the Quran which have been interpreted to mean that punishment in hell is not everlasting. That is, God is, as I said, one of his most important attributes is loving mercy, and that the suffering in hell is not punishment for punishment's sake,
Hmm.
because God, in his all merciful, all compassionate, and all loving character, would not want people to go through eternal punishment. That the punishment in hell is for the purification of the soul. That eventually the punishment in hell will come to an end. It's not eternal.
Can I stop you there? Because believe it or not, time has flown by. We are out of time. Already, I'm going to have you come
Oh,
back.
well, it's
It's going
nearly
to get
time. I guess
here.
we have, what, 5 more minutes or so.
Well, we do, but we still got to give people time where to find you, and I got to wrap up the show and stuff. I'm going to read the comment here from Erica. She says, I've taken more notes during this episode than any so far. Well, that I'm glad you're listening. I'm glad you've taken notes. That's a compliment to you, Nassir.
Thank you
So
very much.
where can people find you and buy your book and get a hold of you if they want to have further discussion with this until we maybe have a chance to have you back on again in the future?
Well, I'd like to emphasize first of all
Okay.
that I did not write this book for the sake of sales.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
but it's got a
now,
message that you
now,
want to
now,
get out.
now, of course, I might get into trouble with my publisher for saying this, but that was not my primary purpose.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, I have made a personal pledge that the bulk of the royalties from the sales of this book, would go to charity, to good
Oh, that's
conduct, which is part
beautiful.
of good conduct.
That's beautiful.
What I am really interested in is spreading the message of the book.
That is a
And
really noble here.
and this book is available through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble, through all the major book publishers. It is available in both electronic format, ebook,
Awesome.
Kindle, and in paperback. Now, I have a website, NassirSabah.com. Nassir Sabah, one word, NassirSabah.com, where there is a contact page at the very end. Now, this website, it talks more about the book, and it expounds some of the points that are made in the book, and it's meant to be kept up to date so that there will be additions to the material of the book that has come to my attention since I wrote it. So I will be very happy to be contacted by anyone who is interested, or who would like to know more about this, or who would criticize me for what I have said.
Well, actually, I found your website. So I had a write up for the show that I actually emailed it to you. So I put your website on there because all I could find at first was it was your to John Hunt Publishing, and then I found your website. So I do have it in the back because I do a write up so people can click and see where to go. So yeah, so you're open to discussion, which is a
Of
great
course,
thing.
I will be most happy to discuss these topics with anyone,
Mhm.
because this is the idea. It's to convey a message, which I think is a very important message,
I and
humanly speaking.
Well, I'm so thankful for you coming here. People were learning a lot from you because for somebody to write, they took more notes than they've ever taken, and people have thanked you. So they've obviously, and I've enjoyed talking to you too tonight as well. But we've got to go. That went by fast. That was 2 hours. Usually it does. It just goes super quick. I want to let you guys know I'm going to be back on here Thursday night with David Hansel with The Thing at the Foot of the Bed, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on UFO Paranormal Radio Network. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but it's going to be a good topic. You know it is.
Well,
And then I will be back next Monday, same time, same space here on the Angel Rock, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I forgot to check. Sometimes I remember, but lots of times I get busy and I don't get a chance to check, but we have a good guest coming as always. Or then you just get little old me. And if you ever want to get a hold of me to book a reading, healing session, I do mentoring and teaching. Maybe you got a show idea or a guest suggestion, get a hold of me on facebook.com/The Angel Rock. I have 2 groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for some of the more paranormal, spookier, supernatural type of topics, and then the Angel Rocker Tribe for a lot of the spiritual concepts. So you get a mix of the both. Please stay tuned. We have Julia and Philip Syracuse coming up next with the Horsefly Chronicles. They've got a great show. They've always got great guests. I want to thank everybody that was here and for all your comments and questions. I want to thank Nassir for being here. And I send you all so much love and light. And yeah, I'll see you Thursday. Thanks again, Nassir.
Thank you very much, Lors.
And
It's been a real pleasure to be on
well,
your.
like I said, I knew we weren't going to get through it all because I have we'll have to have you back on here, Nassir.
Thank you
And
so
thank you
much.
for staying up. It's like 3 a.m. in Beirut right now.
Yeah,
So
well,
thank you.
yeah, well, it's now 5 minutes to 3 a.m.
Well, well, like I said,
in
when I
Beirut.
sent you the email, we got to be off before the 5 minutes, and I try and do that. Anyways, take care,
So much.
everybody. Thanks, Nassir. We'll see you on
Bye
Thursday.
bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.